All right, let's get to the news. So we're going to focus first on a story here involving our very own former governor, Jesse Ventura. Now, this is
Governor Ventura.
The body, Governor Ventura. Now, this is something that you and I have known about for a little bit here. So we're excited to be able to now publicly talk about Ventura Farms. Jesse Ventura Farms, created by our friends over at Retro Bakery.
Yes.
So it's sort of a funny story. We want to tell the story behind this first, and then we'll get to the big news. So Governor Ventura came to a Canna Connect event, and at that event said, I want to be the first governor in Minnesota with my name on a cannabis product. That news sort of went out into the industry. I heard that, and I went, wow, that's really neat. And then I went over to the Uniflora office and said, hey, Joey, were you at Canna Connect? He goes, I was, but I wasn't there when Ventura was talking. Like, what did he say? He said, well, he wants to have his name on an edible company. Fast forward just a few months, here we are, Jesse Ventura Farms.
Nice.
So what is Jesse Ventura Farms? In essence, it is a new line of cannabis products, legally compliant under the hemp rules here in Minnesota, so that low-potency edibles. But it's going to be available throughout the state with Jesse Ventura's name on it, making him officially the first governor or former governor with his name on a cannabis product.
Good for him. He's probably elated to see this day. Because I think he advocated for legalization when he was the governor. How long ago was that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So early 2000s, we had Governor Jesse Ventura. He was someone who was pushing back against on the federal side, saying, hey, maybe we should be having some more action on legalization. Not a ton happened, but hey, it was a much harder time in terms of pushing for that action. Right. Cool to now see him decades later being able to say, hey, I said it should be legal then, and I think you should buy these products now.
Yeah, it was hard to find Democrats that supported it back then. I mean, until 2017, we didn't have any publicly vocal legislators in Minnesota supporting
100%. Yeah, we didn't see a ton of action, but it's true that Ventura's administration was one of the most favorable towards cannabis that we had up until perhaps our current governor right now.
Yeah.
Interesting one. So if people want to try these products, you'll be able to pre-order them starting April 1st, so the day that this episode comes out. Otherwise, you can come down to a 420 event. At the Hook and Ladder, you'll be able to meet Ventura if you want. You'll be able to try some of these products. We're going to actually be sampling one of these products a little bit later in the show. Really excited about that one.
Wait, what's happening at the Hook and Ladder?
Yeah, so at the Hook and Ladder, Jesse Ventura is going to be in the house. There's going to be music. There's going to be entertainment. There's going to be activities people can do. And there's going to be, let's be honest, a ton of cannabis products. So it'll be a fun time for people to come down. It's called the Big Zen 20. We'll put a link to that in our chat here. Should be a fun time. We're hoping to stop by, check in, maybe wave hello to the governor and congratulate him on being the first governor in the entire country with his name on a cannabis product.
Yeah, let's go. And they have a massive area where people can smoke.
Yeah, we've been to a couple events there that were cannabis focused. Really a cool place. So recommend people come on down for that one. We're actually going to put a short video clip in here that Governor Jesse Ventura filmed, telling a little bit more about his brand and sharing his excitement for starting this new company. So let's check that out.
I want to welcome everybody. Hi, I'm Governor Jesse Ventura, or also known as Jesse the Body Ventura. And I want to welcome everybody to Ventura Farms. Ventura Farms is my foray into the world of cannabis. I'm a huge supporter of the cannabis industry. Cannabis saved my family's life. And now it's time for me to return to the cannabis world, and you can join me, Jesse Ventura, and Ventura Farms anytime you want. We're in the game.
I wonder if he dabs.
I wonder if he dabs. I hope he does. And if not, we're going to reach out to him. We're going to get him on the show. We're going to dab up Governor Ventura. So if you're listening to this, Governor Ventura, we want to have you on the show. We've got some concentrates. We will share them with you. Not a promotional gift, just as a friend.
Yeah, Puffco Pro.
There we go. All right, well, that wasn't the only news that happened this week. We also had, for the first time, that Cannabis Advisory Council actually meeting. They said it was going to happen by the end of the first quarter, and March 29th, just barely getting it in. But
just in the nick of time.
Yeah. So just as a reminder, this is that industry advisory board, has 50-plus members helping to advise the administration, helping to advise the Office of Cannabis Management on really how they should be rolling out and running this program.
Did you tune in? Did you hear what they said?
I did, yeah. So there was a couple different things. First off, we had that election of a vice chair. Now, the chair is the director of the office. So in this case, Charlene Briner. Yeah. But the vice chair gets to be chosen by the members. And we had Angela Dawson be nominated, her name be put in the ring. Another member be nominated, them turn it down. And sort of by unanimous consent, we had Angela be elected as vice chair.
Nice.
Yeah, so definitely.
Angela.
Yeah, well, and super exciting to see someone from the industry with an emphasis on how do we make this more accessible, helping to run what's supposed to be one of the advising agencies for the OCM.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be curious to see how influential that advisory council is. I mean, the good thing is if they come with a lot of bad ideas, the OCM doesn't have to take them as instructions or orders, just advice.
Absolutely.
But hopefully that, and I assume they'll have a lot of good advice because they do have people from the industry, you know what I mean, like Angela Dawson, Stephanie Egan,
and
who've all been on our show.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, and I hope we see more activation, if you will, of these people. We spoke to a couple advisory members just strictly on backgrounds. I'm not going to share names, but they all sort of shared the same thought of this meeting sort of felt like an afterthought. We've got a lot of expertise in this advisory council, and they got emails saying, hey, congratulations, you're on the council. We're really excited to have you. And then not a ton else. And then suddenly got an email saying, hey, we're going to have a meeting. Come on down. And the meeting was basically Charlene Briner sharing information about what the office is doing, answering questions, and that was sort of it. We didn't really see a ton of input being given by advisory members being taken under consideration. Obviously, it's just the first meeting, so we're not trying to say, Charlene Briner, fix this. But I think we do hope to see more engagement of some people that really do have a lot of experience, that were chosen for that reason. We hope to see more of their voice heard in how this bill that's currently at the legislature gets rolled out, but also just how our program gets rolled out generally.
Yeah, I mean, there's members on that advisory council that know way more about cannabis and the industry and the legacy market and about equity than probably almost everybody in that office. I mean, I know they're not at capacity yet. They got 9 people and they're going to hire up to 150. So I know they're doing a lot of work to stand up the OCM.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting being able to hear, in total honesty, a very similar presentation from Charlene Briner to the House, to the Senate, and now here to the Cannabis Advisory Council. And hearing that some of the questions on why the office was pursuing for specific legislative changes or why the bill was implementing, a question that keeps coming up is such a strong lottery system. A lot of great questions around it. So I'm excited to see how the office takes it under consideration.
I just had a call a couple of days ago with a member of the OCM staff, and we were talking about the lottery and other equity stuff. So, I mean, they are responsive, and they are trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think they're doing the best they can, but they really are dependent on stakeholders to inform them, what they need to think about, what's in their blind spot, who they need to tap in with. So,
yeah, absolutely agree.
And from what I heard is that the community has been standing up and showing up and, helping them figure things out. So,
yeah, could not agree more. I had the opportunity, shout out to NPR News, to go and speak with Kathy Werzer a little bit earlier this week.
There's a grassroots nonprofit that's keeping a close eye to help keep the community informed about the implementation of all aspects of the legalization process. It's called the Minnesota Cannabis College. Joining us right now is the founder, Tanner Barris. Tanner, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Kathy. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your time.
Big shot.
Yeah, I know. It was crazy hearing this voice and being like, wow, I get to talk back. Normally I just listen in the car, but now we're talking. And insane. But one of the questions I was asked was really, what should we be looking for in that next director? Really, what do we hope to see? And really, I think the biggest thing, what I said there, and I'll say here, is just listening to the industry, trying to take input from so many different types of stakeholders and figure out how do you balance the interest of people that frankly just disagree on how this should be rolled out. I agree with you that the state with their capacity right now really doing a great job of trying to figure it out as we go. I hope that input that they've gotten continues to be taken under consideration and really put into effect.
Yeah, it's a steep learning curve for them, I understand. But, they need to rise to the occasion. Yeah, you did a great job on the interview, though.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's like every major news agency in Minnesota has covered us, and you've done a phenomenal job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I was reflecting upon the interview, going back and looking over the transcript, and realized that when they asked us about our podcast, went, yes, we do have a podcast, and proceeded to talk about it, and then never said the name of it. So thank you guys for listening to our podcast. Just in case you don't know, this is Northern Lights. That's what this is called, Northern Lights Podcast. You can find us on YouTube, everywhere podcasts are found. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the legislative action that happened this week, because we did see some pretty big movement in terms of not just bills being introduced, but now being bills moving through the different bills moving through the different committee process. Not yet conference committee. That's going to be a little bit later. Yeah. No, instead,
into May.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, we saw that Commerce Committee really take up what's being called that Cannomnibus Bill. I hate that name, but it doesn't matter. House File 4757 was introduced as just that OCM bill. It's now been expanded and adopted to include a lot of the other measures that we saw brought up earlier in the session. So let's just run through some of the things that this bill actually includes, and then we can talk about sort of what those next steps are. So first off, that medical cannabis endorsement reform. So getting rid of what's called like a medical dispensary or a medical grow, and just saying cannabis is cannabis. Whether you're selling it to a med patient, then it's medical cannabis. To an adult, then it's adult use cannabis. But it's all the same, and it can be sold at any business with this endorsement. That did make it through. We'll be seeing that brought to other committees. Qualifying conditions not just being the list that the commissioner has, but being anything that a healthcare practitioner would approve, I think a really exciting change to see. So if you have a doctor that says, Marcus, in your life, some ailment or condition would be improved by cannabis, they can recommend you, and you don't have to have one of those 13, 14, whatever the number is right now of approved conditions.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully people don't have an anti-cannabis doctor, but I guess you can always go schedule an appointment with another one.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've never had a medical professional talk disparagingly about cannabis, because I've been open with it for like a decade.
Yeah, I think you and I have had similar experiences in that, and maybe have not had healthcare practitioners that directly would recommend cannabis themselves, but it's been a quite long time since I have a doctor say, yeah, you really shouldn't be doing that.
You're smoking the devil's lettuce, Tanner?
And we should say none of these claims are approved by the FDA, and we're not, whatever the statement is.
Yeah, we offer no medical early.
Yeah, exactly. Some other things that we saw brought through, if you listen to that interview with Bob Galligan, he talked about allowing for on-tap consumption. So not just selling you a can of THC, but being able to say, I'm going to get you a cup of a THC product, now being allowed. It was going to be allowed in those permanent rules. Now in this temporary in-between time, we're allowing it as well. So really excited to see that continue to expand. 280E, so being able to write things off on your taxes that are not federally approved, has now been expanded to all cannabis businesses, not just that medical side.
That's good. But that only applies to state level taxes, right?
Exactly.
Not the federal taxes.
Federally, you're still trying to think of a...
Pinched.
Exactly. Federally, you're still not in a great situation. At least on the state side, they try to offset it a bit. Still not great. We did see some change in those minor cannabinoids. So prior, it was going to be a pretty limited cap on the amount of cannabinoids you could have. Now we're seeing 25 milligrams of CBD, CBG, CBN, or CBC. Before, on CBN, we had 0.5 milligrams. So at least we're seeing more acceptance that these do have a role in people's lives. And under adult use legalization, we should be able to explore that.
I'm just like, where do these arbitrary limits come from? Because, I've heard from Dr. Dabbs that if you're going to have an efficacious dose of CBD, you might need 300, 400 milligrams. So taking 25 milligrams it's almost like placebo.
Yeah. No, it's definitely disappointing to see those caps continue to be built into there. It's important, not important. It's good to note at least that those caps only apply to the low potency side.
Okay.
So we could see products sold through a dispensary, so a licensed adult use micro business, meso business, have higher caps than that. But in terms of selling at a liquor store, Dabbler Depot, places like that, that would be capped to this. But no, I agree with you, especially with CBD. I feel like we're at a point now where it's we're not worried about people overdosing on CBD.
I know.
Sort of disappointing to see there continue to be such restrictive caps.
It's not even psychoactive.
No, exactly. We did see a version of the caregiver's endorsement make its way into this bill. So if you listen back to that interview with Kayla Fearing and Adam Wagner, they talked a little bit more about what that home grower's caregiver endorsement would look like. And while it would have previously allowed you to give up to 16 plants per patient to a caregiver that could have up to 6 caregiving patients that they're caregiving for, we saw a much more restricted version allowed here. So in essence, what this would allow you to do is if you're a medical patient, you could pick a single caregiver and they would be able to grow 8 plants for you. Now, they are only allowed to grow for one patient. Caregivers are not able to have 6, 7 patients they're caring for. This is like, hey, I'm caring for you and I'm going to grow plants for you. What also we see is that this removes the patient's right to grow cannabis at home. So they're not just saying, hey, you can grow for me and now I have my home grow and yours. It's I'm assigning my home grow rights to you and I'm not going to grow at home. So a much more restricted version of what we previously saw introduced.
I mean, what's the rationale?
The rationale is that they didn't want people being able to sell cannabis without a license, even if it's medical and only to a couple people. In essence, they just thought it was too much, but it's sort of disappointing that, you know, you have 15 plants, 16 plants for patients, maybe you have 2 or 3 patients. We're not talking a huge amount of plants. Like, this is a pretty small grow, being able to grow for just a couple people. Really, really restrictive.
I think that's disappointing because there's not going to be that many people who are going to be able to grow cultivate high quality cannabis. Like, of all these people growing it at home, how many of them are like producing fire?
Yeah.
It's a small percentage. So it's like, if you have a caregiver that's like not very skilled, I mean, what's the point?
Well, and I think it's extreme.
Can you grow me some huff?
Well, exactly. Well, and it's crazy to think that, like, all right, so you have the caregivers, they're growing for a patient that they know. What, so they have 8 additional, like, it really doesn't allow for people to be able to grow that much cannabis. So even if you do have a friend, maybe they do grow super fire stuff, they're not growing for anyone but you. And the amount that they can grow for you, pretty restrictive. So
does this mean that the bill that Kayla was talking about is dead?
So this is sort of the version of it that lives on. I think we can continue to fight and say this needs to be expanded more, but at least in the version that was adopted in this Cannomnibus Bill, pretty restrictive.
Is this the first stop in the House Commerce Committee?
It is, yeah. So next it's going to another committee. We'll talk about that in just a minute.
Okay.
But yeah, this is stop number 1 for this bill.
And that's in Representative Stevenson. He chairs that committee, and he's the author of this bill.
Exactly.
On the House side. Yeah.
Yep. Some other things that we saw is that OCM is allowed to determine additional non-intoxicating cannabinoids. So let's say a couple of years from now, you see someone say, I want CB whatever to be able to be approved in these low-potency edibles. It doesn't require a law change. The office can just administratively do that.
That's good.
We saw some changes in that social equity licenses. Instead of needing to be social equity owners for the entirety of the business forever, it now is just required to be a 3-year process. So it needs to be at least held under that social equity owner for 3 years before it can be sold to some other business.
That's good. That's what I was talking to them, like, you know, how are you going to prevent social equity applicants from growing a business and not being able to sell it?
Yeah, 100%.
And they agreed with that.
Yeah. We also saw some early licensure, or what was previously called early licensure, be replaced with a new term, license pre-approval. So they're not saying you have a license, you're not getting it before anyone else, you just have your license pre-approved, that when they start rolling that out, you can be promised to have one.
Yeah, I'm sure that clarification was helpful because some people were like, they were frustrated by the fact that they thought other people were going to get a head start.
Exactly. Very much clarifying. It's not saying they can start business before you, just saying this person is a social equity applicant. We want to ensure that they have a seat at that table.
Right. And I think that's good.
Yeah. The big one that, of course, we're going to mention it, but it's been talked about a lot, is that lottery system did make it through the bill. So we are going to, if this bill passes, see a system where the office is not scoring applicants, but just making sure they meet the minimum qualifications, passing them through that next round where it's then going to be a lottery if you have more applicants than there are available licenses.
But from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you know, it's a lottery system, but for micro businesses, there's like no cap, there's no limit. So as long as you have a good application for a micro license, you're going to get it.
Absolutely. We're starting a new ad campaign called No Cap, No Cap, which is we really want people to know if you want to start a micro business, that's really a great entry point to the industry.
Yeah.
Like how long have you and I been talking about this? We need a route for people to be able to enter. We need this plot for social equity applicants.
Low barriers to entry.
Exactly. Now we're finally going to see that come to fruition. And it's exciting to see that even as caps are placed on other businesses, at least in terms of statute, no cap on micro.
No cap.
No cap, no cap. We also saw some other things. Social equity ownership was updated, that it now just has to have a 65% ownership of the business. So we're able to see more capital being able to flow into that. We also saw that the definition of military veterans was updated to include not just those service disabled or those kicked out because of cannabis, but all military veterans.
So including active members?
Exactly. Let me double check on that. I believe it's just veterans. So I think you have to have already gotten that sort of dismissal from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No longer active.
Exactly. We also saw that previously, if you wanted to transport cannabis between facilities that you owned, so maybe you're a mezzo, you grow over here, you sell over here, you would have actually had to hire someone else with a different cannabis license to move your product. Now, as long as you're moving it within the same ownership of facility, you don't have to hire someone. You can just move it.
Yeah, that was dumb. I mean, it's like all bad ideas were on the table, and a lot of them got included because the bill was just so big, and they had like 4 months to get it done.
Absolutely. Yeah, you still have to abide by the rules. You still have to make sure that you're following the same checklist, but you're not having to pay someone to drive from one facility to another.
Exactly. That's the type of stuff that bleeds the businesses, and they can't even survive.
Mm-hmm. We also saw some changes in terms of the emerging farmer definition was amended so that if you're on a limited lease, so like 3 years or less, you're leasing from a non-family member, maybe you're selling your product directly to consumers, you qualify under that emerging farmer. So if you're someone, you're on a plot of land, you're just sort of getting started, you can at least have a little bit more of a head start into getting into that industry.
So that sounds like a way to include people potentially as a social equity applicant who don't fit any of the other like criteria, right?
Exactly. It's sort of saying that this carve out of small business, you're a farmer, you're selling your product at farmers markets or maybe, CSAs, whatever business model, it's directly to consumers, and that makes you a small business, someone that we want to have part of the industry in terms of the OCM. I
think I'm an emerging farmer.
There we go. Hey. Well, let's talk more about that online, especially the stuff that you grow. Some more stuff that we got coming out of this. We got that minor advertising reform. So you can't advertise with candy. You can't advertise with things that appeal to kids. You can't advertise with alcohol. Minor changes like that. And then the final one is that we did see expert be added in clinical pharmacy to that advisory council. So they might have only had one meeting so far, but they're perhaps getting another member.
I wonder if they filled those vacant positions that were like looking for people with equity knowledge and experience, because those were like some of the most valuable roles, and they were vacant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, Angela, is equity minded, so that's good to have her in that vice chair position.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. We'll let's follow up on that. Tune into the next episode of Northern Lights. We'll give you an update on the advisory council, tell you a little bit more about who makes up some of those roles. All right, well, so this bill we saw get referred to state and local government. No meeting yet scheduled for that. The Senate side, we saw it get referred to agriculture. No meeting yet for that one. So we don't have a ton of information on what those next steps are, but at least we did see that bill clear committee. We see action being moved forward. Likely we'll see something happen this session, but more to come.
I think Senator Eric Putnam chairs that agriculture committee in the Senate, and he was one of the co-authors of the bill that passed and became full legalization. So
there we go.
I'm sure it'll pass out of that committee.
Yeah, hopefully we have some support on that committee side. Definitely going to be needed.